Back. This is Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. And my guests are seated. So let's begin to get into the main issues that take our attention this morning. My guest in the studio from the National Economic Dialogue that is making a lot of recommendations for the government to follow. And Atuforsen says that he is going to take the recommendations as his Bible, even as he prepares for the budget next week. Professor John Gachi, member of the National Economic Dialogue Committee. Also here is Dr. Abdul Tia Kabiru Mahama, MP for Wale Wale. He's been speaking on economics and used to do that in the office of the Vice President. Kofi Bento, Senior Vice President and Policy Analyst, Imani Africa. They were also at the National Economic Dialogue and had very intriguing, interesting views to share. Franklin Kujo led that. As far as they are concerned, good governance is very important for all of this. Dr. Arthur Kobina Kennedy, physician and political risk analyst, also join us. Political activist, I meant to say. Political activist also joins us here via Zoom. Thank you all, gentlemen, for making the time to join us this morning. Thank you, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning.
Right. Yes. Okay, so you look on your screen, the SOEs, there's been something that's been going on with them, and that has been mentioned as a major issue that is driving our economy down. The ECG, Greatco, VRA, Tema Shipyard, Ghana Railway Limited, just giving you a list of the state-owned enterprises. Ghana Cylinder Manufacturing Limited, the Gihok Distilleries, Precious Minerals Marketing Company, which is now becoming the Gold Board, Accra Digital Center, Airtel, Ghana. Now, as you look on the screen, you see the debt of the state-owned enterprises, and this is quoted in billions. So you are looking from 2022, 2023, and 2024. You are seeing in figures from 177 in 2022 to 216 in billion. Now 250 billion. 250 billion. That's how much they have plunged us into. So much debt. The total debt of the state-owned enterprises as of 2023, you also see in your short. It's quoted once again in the billions. And these are the things that we are told partly driving the economy down or central in the operations. Then we were also introduced to the developments at the Bank of Ghana. And Dr. Siama tells us that there's going to be some audit to ask the questions whether, there was value for money in the process. We have paid 230 million US dollars, $230 million US dollars, and we're left with a balance of 31.8 million US dollars to pay. But guess what? The issue that Ghanaians are getting really concerned about is that we spent $11.1 million on furniture and furnishings. Integrated electronic system cost us $15.8 million. The ICT system and network cost us $8.6 million US dollars. And the cost of the headquarters building, as you may have become aware, started at 81.8 million, went to 121.1, 222.2, then to 261.3.8 million US dollars. So they have been punching and looking at the various parts of the economy where the economy is hurting. Now, there are recommendations that the government is to follow. Will they follow it? Let's hear what President Mahama said and committing himself to implementing the recommendations at the economic dialogue.
Gathered here to create a powerful platform where government officials, policymakers, business leaders, economists, industry experts, development partners, and other key figures come together to shape the future of our nation. The insights, diverse perspectives, and actionable recommendations that emerge from these discussions must transcend theoretical frameworks and drive real, impactful decisions that will guide our national economy forward. Throughout our engagement, we'll focus on practical strategies to restore macroeconomic stability and pave the way for long-term economic transformation. This includes developing policies that stimulate growth and create sustainable job opportunities for our rapidly growing population. We'll also examine the structural reforms that are necessary to unleash the private sector's potential and make it truly the engine of growth that drives job creation and innovation. Strengthening economic governance institutions will be a key topic of discussion, ensuring transparency and accountability at all levels of government, while taking decisive action to combat corruption and other things that hinder our progress. It is vital that as we move towards a more prosperous future, and that the economic gains we achieve are distributed equitably, leaving no one behind and fostering inclusive growth that benefits every sector of society, from the most marginalized communities to the industrial leaders of tomorrow. This dialogue is a defining moment, and our decisions must set the course for a more resilient, prosperous, and equitable economy for generations to come. When I assumed office barely 2 months ago, I inherited an economy that was in a state of deep crisis. One was weighted down by numerous challenges. The economy was reeling from unprecedented levels of debt, soaring inflation, high unemployment, declining levels of foreign direct investment, and low business confidence. The financial struggles that our nation is facing have not arisen overnight. They have been the result of several years of financial mismanagement, irresponsible borrowing, reckless spending, and weak leadership. That
has not performed well in revenue mobilization compared to its peers. Ghana's domestic revenue mobilization has stagnated in the last decade and remained below our peers. Ghana collected 13.5% of GDP in revenue, tax revenue. Collection from other major taxes remain low, especially value-added tax, as compared to our peers. Numerous exemptions and complexity of tax system have a detrimental impact on revenue. Almost all state-owned enterprises are in the red. Almost all of them are in the red. From the Electricity Company of Ghana to the Agricultural Development Bank. Almost all of them are in the red. In fact, beginning from the year 2021, 2022, and 2023, you will see that Cocoa Board posed some profit of 2.2 billion in the year 2023. Your Excellency, this is artificial profit. This profit is because they failed to service their debt because of the debt suspension. And so all the cocoa bills that were due at the time, they failed to pay because of debt suspension. Subsequently, this debt still exists, and so we will need to take action to restructure most of the state-owned enterprises.
The comprehensive report of the National Economic Dialogue will be submitted to the Presidency for consideration and implementation, which to call on government to 1. Prioritize efforts to restore macroeconomic stability and regain confidence in the economy by enhancing coordination between fiscal and monetary policy operations and achieve alignment, reviewing the foreign exchange retention regime to support economic stability, implementing major tax reforms that expand the tax net, including property taxes, revised VAT rates, and address revenue leakages, overhauling and ensuring compliance with the Public Finance Management Act 2016 Act 921 and reform the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2018 982.
Right. So you had the president, you had Dr. Kasiel Attoforsen, the finance minister, and then Ishmael Yamson at the National Economic Dialogue. So let's come here and begin to look at this. There have been people from across the spectrum, gentlemen, who have been showering a lot of praises on the government for doing this and to seek to get a buy-in of everybody to make this the country's problems, how to resolve them. Kofi, let me start with you. Do you like the Kwame Pienings, Dr. Amwako, KY Amwakos, and all of those people? Are you this positive?
Well, when it comes to economic dialogues, and good morning to everyone, honestly, I've lived through too many of them. So I think there is a negative, there is a positive. So I just want to be clear. I don't want to sound negative, but I want to be very clear about this. We've lived through too many. That is one. Which one should I start with, the negative or the positive? Let's start with the negative, and then we'll do the positive later. Listen. If you put yourself up for election to lead this country and you tell us you know the problems and you have ideas about how to solve it, I have a problem when you get into office, you call everybody and say, how do we solve this? Now, the negative aspect of it is it that you don't have an idea? Or you do have an idea, but you're not going to tell us, and basically you're wasting our time. Now, I would have thought that a better way, a more compressed way, a more focused discussion would have been something like, these are the problems we have identified. These are the solutions I suggest we apply. And then let's discuss the solutions. But when it's an open free-for-all and everybody is coming and saying, what the ideas and whatever it is, I have a bit of a problem with it.
But this was part of his campaign. He said, I will do this.
And I had a problem with that at the time of the campaign. Because, see, we work in CSOs. We look at the situation, okay? I tell people all the time, Ghana is a difficult situation, but nothing in Ghana is difficult. We just don't want to do the hard stuff. So, look, I said the negative of it is, I wonder whether it is because there are no ideas. Put them forth and let's discuss the ideas. But when you have a free-for-all, I have a problem with that. Now, the positive, it is always good to discuss issues, to dialogue, to widen the net and bring ideas, beyond just your political party. So to that extent, it's a very useful exercise.
And within just your political party, you at Imani have said that is normally this, do you say cocoon or their echo chamber that they get in so they don't get to hear diverse views?
Yes.
So if they do this, it's positive.
So that's the positive. So you avoid the echo chamber effect, okay? Now, but again, when you put such great minds together, I think you should focus the discussion. And I pull from the fact of we've been through too many of these. What did we get from them? And why would this be different? Look, I am happy in a sense that we did that. I just wish we had optimized it and done more. I made my contribution. I wasn't there, but my president was there. We had meetings. I made my contributions through him to the discussion. But I worry about whether this will become one of the talk shops of the past, or it's going to create some sort of difference, compared to the past. And I want to make this point, and I keep repeating it. We know our problems. We know the solutions, but there's a Ghanaian syndrome. We don't want to pay the price. We don't want to do the things that are difficult that will solve the problems, but we want the effect, we want the outcomes of those things. It will never work. We need to make difficult decisions. We need to take difficult, actions, and then we'll get the kind of results that we require. But this whole idea of we want something, but we don't want to pay the price, we should move from it. So, look, in the next few weeks, I'm looking forward to seeing concrete action points coming out. I like what the Minister of Finance said, that he's going to use this as his Bible. But it also worries me. Because honestly, I'm telling you, you should come to the office with all the things that have gone on, with clarity in terms of our 60% of what you want to do, instead of a Bible that you just got to know about a week ago. So there's a certain balance here. I'm hopeful.
The president did a State of the Nation. Mm-hmm. Did you get a sense they knew what they wanted to do?
I got a sense they knew what our problems were. But you know what? I didn't get a sense of a certain resolute set of actions that were going to happen.
There were a horde of list of actions they intended to take.
Resolute.
Including revolutionizing agriculture and all of those.
How many years have you heard that? What does it mean to revolutionize agriculture? Okay, more than 10 years ago, we did some research in agric.
So how come you heard the complaints, but you didn't hear those things you listed?
Hear resolute.
Okay.
Actions that were going to be taken. Look, I go to Franopa, and I'm saying, look, I'm hopeful. Ghanaians believe this government can deliver, and I think they don't have an excuse. They can deliver. But this is what I'm looking for. By now, certain things that you know, this will happen, that will happen. I'm not getting that. But I'm going to continue to keep my hope alive and see what action will be taken. We have the 120 days to look at. But I'm telling you, we know our problems. The solutions are not going to be easy. And we need to see some real resolute decision-making and forward-moving action.
They have inherited an economy that is unable to pay its debts. That's been shut from the, borrowing market, so to speak. They can't go out and borrow. The problem is really huge.
Yes, it is.
What sort of speed and resoluteness were you expecting in the circumstance?
So first, stop the bleeding. The economy is bad, and I don't agree with the MPP people who are trying to spin the fact that we had a great economy. Stop it. Stop it. Okay? Look, we all had hopes, all right? But the previous government, and you know my position there, I'm fine with the candidate. The government was a mess. Blew up our whole financial system. Old people are dead and their investments are stuck. Stop spinning this business of the economy is great. It's not great. Now, the new government has come in and they need to do certain things. When you have this kind of situation, I see too many promises. And I don't see too much in terms of cost cutting. All right? And you're hearing soft things. Take free SHS. We don't know what they want to do now. Are you going to do it or not do it?
Are you not hearing cost cutting in ministers, in government employment at the presidency? Are you not hearing cost cutting? Are you not hearing cost cutting at the celebration of the Independence Day? 20 million budget. We spent 1.5 to do that.
I heard you talk about it. That's sensible, like you said. But you said, you made a point. You said, that money that was saved should be put to some chips compound in your village. That's not what will happen. That is not what will happen.
You said agrobesoa nifrianopa.
Yes.
So are there not signs that agrobeso?
I use the word resolute. You see, I am saying we have hope that it will work. And there is no reason why it should not work. There is so much goodwill that this government can do so many difficult things and it will get a pass. So I'm simply saying, use the goodwill. Okay? Take the people along, explain the situation, okay? And then do the things that you need to do. You have 2 years, all right? And I am hoping that really we will get to that point. So I'm still hopeful, but
now, Prof, I wanted to do something, but I have changed my mind. I wanted to hear around before I come to you, but maybe you will help us. Because Kofi said, this kind of free-for-all sort of engagement, is that really what the dialogue is? Because I understand 6 thematic areas, yes, help us understand the process.
Okay. I think we look at the situation presented and we decided that if we have 6 thematic areas, that will capture all our problems. So we have the 6 thematic areas and all the problems have been discussed under the thematic areas. And so, recommendations were approved.
Which are these areas?
Restoring macroeconomic stability, growth with depth, and the depth seemed to be an acronym, that is talking about diversification of the economy, exports and expansion, productivity across board, infusing technology into our business processes and governance, and also focusing on human capital development. So that is about growth and with depth. Then we have private sector-led growth, where the private sector will want to be truly participant in the economic delivery of the country, infrastructure delivery, and then establishment of businesses, etc., helping government to raise the needed revenue, creating the growth momentum of the economy and employing people. Then the private sector also had some challenges. For example, if you take PPP as a unique example, PPP was promulgated into law in 2020 with the aim of galvanizing and engineering a new phase of financing infrastructure and the rest. But there are some limitations that the private sector think that we have to work on to allow them to operate efficiently in that phase. Then we also look at structural reforms and policy reforms. It is under the structural reforms that we see highlighted very much the issues about the electricity and energy sector, and also the cocoa sector. Then finally, we look at where my brother as president operated. That is restoring good governance and combating corruption. So these are the 6 thematic areas, and we will all appreciate that if we calibrate the problems of the country, they all fit into all these 6 thematic areas. So that was a...
Kofi Bento wants to know, what is it that anybody came to this platform and spoke about that we are already not aware of?
Well, even if we are aware of, it gives more agency to resolve the problem. So that is it. And all these problems that we're talking about, they didn't start today. They have been with us. If you talk about energy, they have been with us. If you talk about cocoa sector, it didn't start just 2 years ago. They have been with us, but we are not bold to face the situation and resolve them. And that is the difference. That happened during the dialogue. So there is some kind of willingness to confront the problems. That is the difference. And it does not mean that the government is not aware of some of these problems. It does not also mean that the government is not aware of some other solutions to the problem.
Is there anything?
But the government made a commitment that within 120 days, I will subject the challenges of the economy for a consensus building so that all of us will think alike.
Is there anything the government would have missed but for this process?
Yes, the consensus. You see, you put up a policy framework, you went to election, you won the election, but you are aware that there are other people within the economy, other political parties. We are divided along political lines. So why can't I bring the people together? These are the challenges I've identified. These are some of the solutions. How can we shape it to build a consensus and going forward? That is what we have done. Nigeria has done it before.
I don't hear you convince. I don't hear you convince Kofi Bento yet. Over the week, I had the opportunity to meet with some people, entrepreneurs, finance and economic people who are excited about this process. But Kofi is asking, I mean, to what end really? If they are the new things that we are regurgitating, and the government would have known these matters already, so what's the point?
I don't think that I need to answer to satisfy him. The point is, the party went to the election with a set of policies. The party also promised that I will subject myself to allow for a consensus building around the issues that are confronting us. And the party has just done that. So
and you sincerely believe there's a certain advantage. There's a certain advantage in resolving our economic problems that this dialogue brings?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. And I talk about consensus, buy-in, cross-fertilization of ideas. Some of the issues that you want to do, during the engagement, you could see that there's some polishing of the ideas. That's the beauty of it.
Were you, as organizers, unhappy that the NPP, as a party, was not interested in participating?
Well, what we were looking at is to organize an inclusive engagement. And we believe that all the parties that we have invited, all the practitioners we have invited, the private sector players and the rest that we have invited, provided us with that solid, inclusive discussion.
Nothing is missing by their absence.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that.
Kofi, are you still in that place that this is free-for-all process that sort of not properly, as it were, organized? And what do you also say about the NPP's, decision?
And the NPP's decision is political, right? And to that, I'm saying that because I don't want to say it's good or bad. I mean, you lost that election terribly, all right? And the guys who won say they can run the country, let them run it. Think about yourself, it's political. But in a sense, it's not statesman-like, all right? So sometimes you just go and sit there and watch them. So to that extent, let's not discuss them. I'm still not convinced. Let me tell you something. There are things that affect our macroeconomic arrangement. He knows it. Debt and revenue. I didn't hear any serious thing about debt and revenue. There are things that, even concerning that area, may be motive, like e-levy. What concrete thing is happening with it? Okay? They were arguing about whether the past government left money to pay the debt DDP or not. I can't tell. Look, he's an economist. I'm just a simple consultant. I can't see our way 18 months from here concerning debt and revenue. There are things that affect Ghanaians every day: water, health, education, energy, transport, and telecommunications. All right? Nothing I heard about water. Health, the big issue is NHIS.
Well, first, I'm not sure you had the opportunity to follow through.
Of course.
Particularly,
this is me. You asked me.
The working sessions.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. Of course. I couldn't have followed all of it. So I'm saying, you see, like I'm saying, this government has massive goodwill. Take the people along. I can go into all kinds of esoteric areas. I'm just dealing with the things that everybody understands. Take NHIS. Ghana's NHIS is one of the most generous in the whole world. And given the structure of funding it through that VAT, if we can manage the collection and stop the waste, instead of putting it to health, they are building things and then using it in IT things and whatever it is, and it's not working well. I didn't see anything. That affects everybody who has that card. Education, a lot has been said about free SHS. Today, we don't know where it is going. Okay, so I'm saying, look, all the talk is fine.
There's a separate conference that's going on about free SHS.
Fine, thank you. You see, you are saying...
Not free SHS,
we,
the education
we just
system.
had a massive economic forum. The biggest. All right? You put all the people together. I'm saying these crucial things were not sufficiently addressed to the point where people feel like there is a certain direction.
In one of the sessions, I heard somebody like David Ofosu-Dote, and some of the things you are referring to, free SHS issues, he appeared to have given, what he felt were solutions that could address it. But, Prof, do you hear Kofi? What do you have to say to him again? Because he's not hearing. He's not impressed. There are many out there who are watching us right now who will join Kofi. What do you tell them? Because you organize this.
Okay. I think the education issues are under the education forum. So that is the way you need to assess it. So you cannot bring it into the National Economic Forum and use that to assess the how.
So did you have solutions that would change, like he says, NHIS? We were told about all the SOEs and the indebtedness in excess of 250 billion, is it? I mean, how are you going to resolve that? Do they get the solutions to that? We're told that we need over $700 million to be able to keep the lights on for the whole of the year, particularly for a 24-hour economy. Do they have solutions for all of that?
Yes, all those solutions were presented during the breakout sessions a feedback. And if you watch critically on the news, the various presenters present on those areas. So he indicated that he couldn't have followed everything. So,
that's right.
So I think if he can go back to check, all those things were provided.
All right, Dr. Kabiru.
We provided solutions on the energy sector, provided solution in the macroeconomic, provided solution in the private sector, provided solution in governance and all the areas. So all those things have been captured. But I must also indicate that we are here to compile the detailed report that will capture the details. Those were the highlights that were presented during the session.
Right.
So we are working on the comprehensive detail.
Among the recommendations, once again, were coordination between fiscal and monetary policy operations, reviewing the foreign exchange retention regime, major tax reforms that expand the tax net, including property tax, revised VAT rate. I've heard this over and again, like Kofi Benson will say. Overhaul the PFM system, reform SOEs. I've heard this time without number. In fact, Ken Ofori-Atta has suggested soon after they came into office that the SOEs, the pecs of the CEOs and those who heads them, he was going to make sure they were going to reduce them because they were taking unconscionable amounts as their pay. I heard Dr. Stephen Amoah, who was on the show last week, criticized his own government during the period that they had to delay some of them because you had multiple heads, CEO, deputy CEO, deputy, for institutions that are making loss, and yet they were draining the state coffers. So here is a reform CSOs and enforce transparent financial reporting. There ought to be expenditure controls in public agencies, and the need to resource internal audit regime, comprehensive review of the ECG's operations, and implement necessary reforms to position it for potential private sector involvements. Well, we tried one, it went bust. You remember PDS, comprehensive review of ECG operations, that I read that. Eliminate illegal mining. Well, Galamsey, while resolving inefficiencies in the cocoa value chain to boost production and sustainability, illegal mining. Return Cocoa Board to its role as agency under the Ministry of Finance, link public sector remuneration to productivity. I've heard this since I became politically aware. Exactly. Accountability and efficiency, among other things. Yes, Dr. Kabiru.
All right, thank you very much, and good morning to your
You should have been there. You were all over the place organizing press conferences.
First and foremost, I think that the intention around this whole economic dialogue is a good one. It's good in the sense that governance from participatory perspective is good and a virtue. In fact, it's one of the tenets of participatory democracy to, from time to time, bring people to discuss and arrive at a consensus on how the nation should be governed, especially pertinent issue of economic governance. It's important that you build consensus on them. So to that extent, and much more so because it was a promise they made to the good people of Ghana within the 120 days that they are going to convene a national economic dialogue to engage the good people of Ghana on the way forward. It's good. But I also side with my senior brother to the fact that when you are given a mandate to rule, you come with very clear interventions, problem solution, and then you then discuss those. You don't go and throw the whole economy to the good people of Ghana and say, let's discuss and come to a solution of how we address the issues. And that is the point that I think that the government could have, it should have been a guided dialogue where people would come with a very clear interventions to address certain problems that I didn't see.
But it was 6 areas, thematic areas.
I mean, the thematic
and
areas,
they explained to the people
it's
and
like telling us that let's go and decide agriculture. Let's go and discuss education. Let's go and discuss macroeconomic stability. That was the areas. But if you come to identify the problems in agriculture, these are the linkages problems, these are the value chain problems. Let's discuss them. This is our proposed solution. Determine the viability of our solutions. and proffer alternative solutions.
I heard their Greek minister. She was talking about the problems, the gaps, and even went to alumina, how we can produce by ourselves rather than take the raw material out and then go and buy and bring in. You know, she was talking about all of these things.
I mean, I'll come to even talk about their communique, which is like the summarized version of what we expected. Admittedly, they mentioned the fine details will be out, will be presented to the president, and probably the good people of Ghana will get to also read that. But like you said, you took the wind out of my sail. Not even one single thing you will hear from the dialogue that sounds striking new. Not even one. If we take the macroeconomic to inclusive growth, with sustainable, inclusive and sustainable growth, infrastructure, every single one of it has been tested, has been mentioned, has been profiled by previous governments. Not even one single one, except the decision now that the only new thing is that they want to revise VAT. VAT is already to revise it. Possibly the only interpretation is to increase it. That is the only possible interpretation we can give to the VAT. They even including it as part of the key things to discuss or as part of their communique. So, for instance, you are talking of coordination between fiscal and monetary policy. We've gone through that. You are talking about the fact that you want to review the forex regime. In fact, at a point in time, we had to go over black market people. We had to introduce safeguard about forex exchange. Retention policies by corporations. We've discussed all that, as a country. We are going to about reforming or overhauling the PFM Act or system to ensure that we are able to, align it with our Fiscal Responsibility Act. Even in our manifesto promises, we all promise about doing something about Fiscal Responsibility Act and capping expenditure of government in the budget. COSO reform, and even this issue of COSO, I don't know what we discussed it. State-owned enterprises problem is not even, it's several decades problem. I remember in the state-owned enterprises report, aggregate report for 2016, those institutions we are mentioning now as being in negative were the same institutions. In 2016, we complained about VRA making losses, we complained about TOR making losses, we complained about PMCC making losses, we complained about Volco making losses, and Cocoa Board. The same story. As a matter of fact, that year, we said that there was a total loss of 1.7 billion Ghana cedi. And those that made profits was about 1 billion. So there was a net loss of 791 million Ghana cedi net loss. So the same problems we are having. Today, we are discussing the same state-owned enterprises as being in debt. So, the problems of this country, if you are a student of the Ghanaian economy, you would have known the problems. The only thing we are lacking is that novel, cutting-edge solutions that will propel us to the stage that we want. We'll talk about expenditure rationalization. He has, even in academia, he has profiled some of these solutions on radio, on television, whenever he's called upon to engage the country on the way forward. So the difficulty I have with that is, could we have done without it? Considering the outcome, my answer is yes.
In my line of work, we push paper and we keep people's confidences. But let me tell you this, I've spoken to some within your party who are into business, who are actually in the finance area and economics area. And they say, what Mahama is doing is what you missed, Asin Akufo-Addo missed, by not bringing the people on board. And that what he's doing, he's going to get a lot of credit and goodwill, which also helps the economy itself, even the optics.
Council, the problem with that, we had Senchi. It's not different from the economic dialogue. But what did the Ghanaian people face? I agree that there are some people who would love to have been part of the whole discussion and government bringing him in to be part of the table. There is also a particular president who believes that, look, the Ghanaian people have elected you to solve problems. If you did not have the solution to it, we don't know it all. That is a fact. But if the people have entrusted you and believe that your solution, the manifesto you presented to them was a good one, and they voted you, go ahead and implement the manifesto. You may get certain things wrong, but that is why you have the institution of parliament. That is why you have the oversight role parliament we support, and that is the people representatives. Okay, so people may look at the optics of it and say that Mr. Mahama is getting goodwill because he's bringing, but this is not the first time Mr. Mahama is bringing people together to discuss the national economy. We've had Senchi, but Senchi did not deliver the good that we wanted. Okay, we had Senchi, and Senchi fed into the homegrown policy, and the homegrown policy was what was fed into the IMF program, but the IMF program has been implemented, but we are back to the same point. We had the PC-PEC program.
They argue that the IMF program, which was formulated on the Senchi report, is what kept the economy in the first term of the NPP administration that you like to project to the world that you did a good job. Akufo-Addo repeatedly tells the world about how he did well, particularly in the first 2 years.
Granted that was what fed in. I'm saying that the government also has some consultation that fed into the IMF program, the extended credit for the PC-PEC. It was an engagement with industry players, stakeholders, CEOs. That doesn't suggest that the government was not engaged. The PC-PEC was a collaborative document. So
there's nothing wrong with this?
There's nothing new that, I mean, people may differ in the approach that you bring people to the whole of Ghana to one conference room. Some people will want to do it in terms of group meetings, meeting the academia, going to meet the traders, the approach may differ. But let's not create a sense that this is the only time a government is engaging the good people of Ghana in terms of drafting an economic policy. And I give an example. The most recent is the PC-PEC program. So anyone's wanting to suggest that Mr. Mahama's approach, people might have had problem with the approach of Nana Akufo-Addo because there are certain things they believe that bring it to the Ghanaian people. Let's discuss, for instance, e-levy. I sincerely feel that the Ghanaian people thought they did not have a deliberative and comprehensive discussion and consensus building on it, and it was implemented. There are some pockets of intervention that we can disagree on, but on the economy at large, or the whole economy, I don't think that what was done in terms of the National Economic Forum was totally different from what was done in generating the PC-PEC program. Okay. But in any case...
Even on Galamsey, I think the MPP regime held, stakeholders meeting, brought Asante Hene, everybody to try and get ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes, what did you want to say?
Yeah.
And I'm going to Dr. Arthur Kennedy shortly.
Yeah. You were talking about guided dialogue. I think that was exactly what we did. So we made the chairpersons and the presenters of each thematic area. We presented to them what were the issues that should drive the discussion. So that was exactly what they did, and that brought about the recommendations that came by.
Okay.
And I got the impression that Dr. Kabiru is saying that they were not able to solve the problems that we are talking about now. That is why the same problems are being highlighted. And the difference now is that there is a commitment to ensure that those problems are confronted and dealt with.
Thank you very much. Now, let's go to Dr. Arthur Kennedy. And it's a difficult game for the NDC, is it not? Because it's seeking to scrap all sorts of taxes. E-levy is going, covered tax is going. That alone, you're going to lose as much as about 8 billion, cedis in revenue. Betting tax will go. And you're telling us the economy is in intensive, care. How are you going to do this? Dr. Arthur Kennedy, let's check if you are also as positive like the other, elder statesmen who were part of this process and have been saying this is good, except sometimes we are familiar with this path. Implementation, it's always our problem.
Yes. Happy Independence Day to all Ghanaians. They say that we celebrate our and if we haven't achieved much in life. So we should celebrate Independence Day. But I think it's an interesting conversation. Our problem, Samson, is that we refuse to call things by their proper names. Kofi Bento makes an excellent, impassioned case about whether anything is new and all that, and then he falls into the same trap by saying that the vice president, who was the economic guru for the government that abysmally failed, was a great candidate. I mean, that is part of our refusal to call things by their proper names. I am reminded of the story of a guy who got married, and after some time, nothing was happening, and the elders called him and they said, "Where are the children?" He said, "I'm talking to my wife." And the old man said, "Man, there is a way of producing children. You can't produce children by just talking to your wife. There are things you need to do." I think we've heard a lot of these things, and I'm glad that it was brought up.
The vice president didn't call the shots. He was not the president.
Yeah, but he was the vice president who was brought in because he had economic news. The president said, "I'm on board because he's an economic genius." So at the end of the day, you can't tell us that the economy failed and you knew nothing about it. You were only there blanket. But let me go on.
But we understand, for example, the vice president was against e-levy, but the government went ahead to implement it. What could he do?
Well, and what could he do? Have you ever heard of Ujinja Odinga, who resigned as vice president of Kenya because he disagreed with the direction of the governance? And to get back on strike, you realize Donald Trump has been in office for less than John Mahama has been in office. But it seems like he's been there. Every day, he's raining actions, good and bad, on the people. Governance is about doing. And my point was that the Senche engagement and the report, I went back and read it. It sounds very, very similar to the National Economic Dialogue. And part of it is that a lot of the players are the same. They are the same people who have been saying the same things. The problem with Ghana is that we don't want to do things. We kind of tinker around the edges of problems. And the spokesperson for the NDC says, "Oh, the details are coming." Yes, but the highlights tell us your priorities.
On this platform, if I may clarify this before I forget, Professor John Gachi is not here speaking for NDC. He was part of the organizers of the forum.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
The organizer of the forum says the details are there, and a lot of these things people are saying are in the details. It's true, but the communique highlights your priorities. So if something is important enough, it will be in your communique. There was nothing about fighting corruption. I think fighting corruption is an indispensable pillar to turning our economy around. So even if you were listing 3 things, it should have been there in blazing headlines. I haven't even talked about the action. I never heard any discussion about the role of the diaspora. For over the last decade, they've been sending every year more money than we get in foreign direct investments. And we didn't discuss the role of the diaspora in our economy. There was nothing on moral enforcement of the country, because most of our problems are moral. The difference between right and wrong, principle, calling things as they are. They are talking about increasing revenue. Every year, Parliament gets people to line up to ask for tax annulment, tax forgiveness. Every year they do that, even while officially we are saying we are not raising enough revenue. How are you going to raise enough revenue when every year you are forgiving taxes? And there are state-owned enterprises. I can tell you, in 2000, one of the first detailed conversations I had with Boache Jakons on state-owned enterprises, the World Bank had prepared a report on Ghana's state-owned enterprises with solutions. That was a quarter of a century ago. And we're still talking about them. We need to understand that governance is about doing things. And the good professor talked about, there's going to be another dialogue on education, how many dialogues are we going to have? I am hopeful, but frankly, I am getting less and less optimistic by the day. We need to start doing things. What are we going to do about corruption? Without solving corruption, nothing else will work. What are we going to do to bring the diaspora to the table? If we don't do that, then they will lose interest in our development. And I tell you, from where the diaspora come, there are more people behind them, our children, who will give us 50 and 60 years of commitment going to second and third generations if we do things right. What are we going to do? For example, when was the last time a president fired a cabinet minister for corruption? When was the last time Parliament refused to pass the budget for a ministry because auditing showed that there was malfeasance? Why is it that we talk about state-owned enterprises and President Mahama, unfortunately, has already set the predicate for the state-owned enterprises continuing to fail because we have appointed people to them based solely on cronyism without reforming their boards and bringing transparency and other things that will be the foundations of turning them around. And as for privatization of ECG, that people think is a solution. Here in North America, most electricity companies are not privatized because most states think that things like electricity and health and other things might be too important to subject to the tender mercies of profiteering or profit and losses. So that is not a panacea to all problems.
So you're seeing the president being slow, compared to, as it is, Donald Trump, and in action almost every day, and like you said, good and bad, because some of the things he's doing, he himself is beginning to reverse some of them because they are biting. Listen to the MPs, just a couple of them, and tell me if the president is not, in fact, signaling correctly, because it does appear there's a groundswell of the society that suggests that the president is doing right.
Mr. Speaker, it is only under this government that when Baomia digitalizes in Samanfo, Eji Kronufa, you digitalize to erase, to bring forth ghosts at national service. That is what your digitalization is about. Mr. Speaker, Baomia Bako in Samanfo Bebre. Mr. Speaker, we live in a country where after 8 years, some people cannot show us a completed functioning hospital. All they have are uncompleted projects and at various stages of completion. We have been hearing various stages of completions till 2017. When are you going to complete them? Of course, Baomia Bako uncompleted projects bebre. But Mr. Speaker, when you leave an economy that is struggling to pay its debts, you want us to invite you to a banquet? An economy where your debt strategy was to borrow recklessly, default in payment, and declare bankruptcy. Do you want the president to come smiling when he's delivering this gloomy picture that you have given him? If that amounts to lamentation, then so be it. Reckless to the point of finding it difficult to understand. And when you decide to put a stop to their recklessness, they call you a terminator. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately for them, the man who inherited their mess is a ruthless terminator. Mr. Speaker, John Mahama is a terminator of ghosts at NSA. I remember you were the information minister when you were trying to educate me on what is called samurai bond, panda bond, century bond. Mr. Speaker, these are the people. They were experts in bonds. When you ask Kojo, he said, oh, this is samurai bond. It is in Japan. They knew every corner where they were giving loans. Panda bond. Kojo, are they still giving the panda bonds? They said something was called century.
Three major things that I want to draw the government bench's attention to. Number one, stop the propaganda. You have won the election already. You don't need to do more propaganda. The propaganda will not create jobs. It won't put food on the tables of people. It won't put clothes on the backs of people. Rather, bring your governance programs. Till date, we don't have a single definition for the 24-hour economy program. Everybody you talk to has a different definition. Program Bako, definition bebre. Program Bako, definition bebre. Spend time doing less propaganda and more time bringing your governance programs so that Parliament can assist you and work on it. Look at our public debts. They inherited a public debt of 120 billion Ghana cedis. And I remember distinctly that President Akufo-Addo stood to your right in this house and declared that the 120 billion Ghana cedi debt was unheard of. At the last reckoning, Mr. Speaker, our public debt stood at 721 billion Ghana cedis. Even then, Mr. Speaker, it was because they denied 1.3 million Ghanaian bondholders of the rights to earnings on their bonds. Mr. Speaker, the domestic debt exchange program, as Mr. President rightly noted, is the harshest economic policy in the history of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, these indices point to one fact, that the Akufo-Addo-Bawumia administration have been the worst managers of our economy by far and away. And there can be no dispute about it. Ghanaians have lived through the worst economic crisis in a generation. Ghanaians have lived through the worst economic crisis under the Fourth Republic, if not in the entire history of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, since the year 2020, or immediately after the elections of that year, the Ghanaian economy has been in a tailspin. For the first time in decades, a Ghanaian government defaulted on debt payments. When President Mahama was leaving power in January 2017, Ghana could fulfill its debt obligations. At a point, our debt to GDP ratio under the MPP leapfrogged to 104%. It meant that if theoretically we were to pick all of our GDP and pay our debt with it, we will still require another 4% to do so. It is the worst in our history under the Fourth Republic. Mr. Speaker, the budget deficit is the greatest indicator of economic prudence, because the fundamental principle of economic management is that you cannot live beyond your means. Even President Mahama stated boldly that in the event that he was elected, he will work with 60 ministers. This compelled our colleagues on the other side to immediately promise to work with 50 ministers. Mr. Speaker, these are the same people who defended to the hilt the appointment of 125 ministers. Mr. Speaker, it will interest you to note that the worst economic outcomes that this country has seen emanated from their performance between 2017 and 2020. After that point, all they did was to try to patch up for the wrongs of 2020. That terrible economic performance was brought about by the biggest government in our history of 125 ministers. That means that you don't need a legion of ministers to be able to manage the country properly. Now, Mr. Speaker, I use myself as an example of the savings that are going to be made by having a reduced government. My colleague on the other side, and my friend, Honorable Oponkuma, who, by the way, is my constituent also, used to head a ministry called the Ministry of Information. Mr. Speaker, that ministry had 76 people working there to manage government information. Mr. Speaker, as I speak to you, it is myself, a deputy, and 5 other people who now manage government information. Mr. Speaker, if you move from 125 ministers to 60 ministers, Mr. Speaker, that means that you are going to buy 60 less Land Cruisers.
Forgive us, we're looking for a specific sound, but we had to go round about it. Forgive us about that. Dr. Atta Kennedy, people are talking about cutting down on the cost of government and so on, and that the signals are showing, including just how the 68th Independence Day celebration was observed?
I mean, those are valid points. And I think that is why I say that I am hopeful. But more needs to be done. You know, I think that talking about the election being over, the president's information person sounds like he was really litigating the campaign a little bit. The campaign is over. I think at this stage we should be doing accountability and executing. You know, all these people, you know, I saw these charts about Bank of Ghana building with estimates that have tripled. Nobody is asking questions. We're talking about banking reforms that led to closure of some banks. We need accountability. Accountability as in putting people in the dock to answer questions. Why was this done? Why was that done? And at the end of the day, we must punish some people. It sounds like, I mean, we like your Kagari, but we don't want to see the making of Gari. You know, we need to do things. And I wish the president well, but I have a fear that in the end, we're going to do a lot of talking and find out in 4 years that most of the people who ran the country into the ground were never asked to account for their misdeeds. Okay. And that will really be sad because it will just signal to future leaders that they can do the same thing. And I can tell you, sadly, that in 4 years' time, we're going to find out that this kind of corruption and others we are decrying, some of them are happening even from members of ORA, you know, and that is unfortunate. My counsel to the president is that talk is good. He talks well. His speech at the National Economic Dialogue was very good. It was heartfelt, but a president's legacy is based on things he does, not just on things he says. He needs to do things. Okay. And by the way, you look at how they are talking about the National Economic Dialogue. The government says our coffers are empty, but they are offering salary increases. You know, so if our coffers are empty and we are offering salary increases, how are we going to end up funding those salary increases? So these things have become very familiar, you know, complaining about state-owned enterprises and funding them, you know, but the same things that we complain about, we just wait for a decent interval and we go back and do them. Those people who spoke at the National Economic Dialogue were very good people. I've read K.Y. Amwakun's book about his autobiography, very good book.
He's been on this for a very long time.
Absolutely. But the problem with the elder statesmen and others is that they get to a point where they don't want to offend anybody, you know. So we should listen to them sometimes, but I'm just saying you can't make omelets without breaking eggs. And I think that we need to be breaking eggs.
Okay. Thank you very much. Dr. Tony Edu joins us for a brief intervention. Doc, thanks for joining us. Please, let's hear you.
Hello.
Yes, Doc.
Good morning, Samson.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you clearly. Please go on.
Okay. Ghana for Yapekasao. Chokrodo. You get up in the morning and talk, no action. My point of departure is Dr. Atta Kennedy's observation about our SOEs. Ghana Airways and Ethiopian Airlines started the same year. Ethiopian Airlines have hundreds of planes in flight. Ghana Airways is dead. Why? Like Atta Kennedy said, we don't employ the expertise to manage our SOEs. We don't encourage our graduates, after they've done their national service at the ministries, they are thrown back to the streets. But these are the enthusiastic future. I'll give you my personal experience. I took graduates doing their national service to build the monitoring and evaluation system at a very minimal cost. I used the same team to build an online visa and passport application and approval system in The Hague when I was sent to The Hague. The total cost was 12,000 euros. When I left, it's been thrown off and it's gone for 450,000 contract to a company called VMH Global. That is how we manage our state assets. Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, his vision was to irrigate the whole of the Accra Plain and turn it into large-scale agriculture. In 2009, President Mahama, then Vice President Mahama, supported a paper I presented to Professor Mills at a cabinet retreat. I call it Peri-Urban Agricultural Homestead. Take a look. Accra is overcrowded, overpopulated, food prices are very high. Farming close to Accra reduces food prices. Definitely. That is simple economics. The people who will do it are those you see on the railway line carrying 10 tubers of yam on one arm. Strong, virile people. And yet, they said there was no land. The government has the executive power to take land and give it to private people years later to create concrete castles. But you cannot have the same executive power to build large-scale mechanized agriculture, harboring artisanal people who can build their own house, dormitories, living there. Why? What is wrong with us? Why do we talk Roman? We don't act. What is wrong?
Okay. So you want us? It's a call to action. That's what we should do rather than talking.
They are low-hanging fruits. Pick them.
All right. Okay. Thanks for the points made. Thank you very much, Dr. Tony Edu. And let me come back here quickly before we take a break and return to the next issues. And the next issues, Dr. Atta Kennedy will begin with us on the two of them as quickly as he will make his points, and then because he has to take leave of us at a certain point. So now, listening around and returning, when the matter of the SOEs was spoken about, we heard the man who was in charge previously tell us about how selective, and this is particular or familiar with new governments. They pick part of it where there is some bleeding, then they talk about, but they don't talk about everything. We have been told about the profits that were being made in the other SOEs, so that we have 53 SOEs, 39 reported profits in 2023. And yet we pick out the number that have the heaviest debts and are running in the red to talk to the nation about. Is that a fair way to do it? Are we going to get solutions if we continue to do things this way? Joseph Kujo, the former Minister for Public Enterprises, had to come out to share, the contrary facts. Yes, okay. Yes.
Yeah. before I get to that, I want to emphasize that the president has promised 120 days a social contract.
He's done 60 days.
Yeah, that is the reason why we are doing the dialogue within the 120 days. And this engagement will not continue forever. So those calling for action, the action will follow very soon. The SOEs, my understanding is that we are talking about those SOEs which are very sensitive to the Ghanaian economy. Take ECG, for example, very sensitive. Take the others like Cocoa Board, very sensitive. So you cannot leave these sensitive SOEs which are bleeding with the issues of procurement, finances, and focus on their core areas as a problem, and you cannot highlight them. And that is why it is very important to highlight them. Take ECG, for example. If ECG is not operating efficiently, we all know the problem that we are going to be facing. So that is the reason. So I'm not sure it's because of one wants to achieve some political end. That is the reason why those ones were selected.
Okay. All right. Yes, Kofi.
But I also want to agree with Dr. Kennedy that diasporan issues are very important. They do.
You're agreeing to an omission.
Yeah,
that ought not happen.
There
was an omission there.
They are the one that deal with a lot of remittances, and we know what remittances do to our country. And
you are stating as a matter of fact that you must have dealt with tourism and the other areas.
We discuss remittances.
Okay.
But he wants us to highlight
diaspora.
And I agree with him that we need to highlight the diaspora. Because the remittances that we discussed, they were the one behind it.
I represented a group of the people in the diaspora to go on the Ropal case.
So it's important that
who can be registered where they live and vote from where they are. And I discovered, that was the time I was doing that case, that I discovered that for 2 times their remittances far exceeded what we were able to collect locally. I was shocked.
So that is the spirit within which I'm saying that it's an area that we need to deal with very well.
Again, on this, you represented them.
Yeah.
Ropal. We pretend we can't do it. Look at the number of things we've been doing.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm saying, look, when it comes to Ropal, if you elect me today, I will make the point straight. In 6 months, register Ghanaians and they can vote.
The judgment has been sitting there. The EC kept giving excuses. We cited them for contempt a number of times. They had to do whatever they had to do. But you know why? It will not be implemented because the parties have their own issues. Some suggest maybe I have more people in the diaspora than the other party.
Be holding the country back?
Anyway.
Yeah, so let me conclude. It is not true that corruption issues were not dealt with. If you're talking corruption, we are talking about procurement, we are talking about anti-corruption institutions, we are talking about conflict of interest, disclosure of assets. All these things were discussed and they provided some kind of recommendations. So it is not true that corruption issues were not.
That was a major plank in the Imani presentation as well. Yes, Kofi, your final comments around this matter.
See, let me go to the SOE matter. Again, my worry is that we dance around issues in this country. Samson, from a fundamental point of view, we don't need to have SOEs. Let me explain.
We have as many as 170 plus of them on our books that we have set up.
When a nation starts at the time Kwame Nkrumah started, you don't even have people to run institutions. So we had white people, and you phase them out. That's part of the reason why you create SOEs, to do things that the private sector cannot do. After 60-80 years, none of what the SOEs are doing is not possible from the private sector. Let me give you one example. We spend millions of dollars supporting STC. All right? They have a managing director, HR manager, personnel, whatever. There are people who wear suits to office every day. They have been given millions of dollars worth of state resources to run a transport service. Just less than a kilometer away, you have VIP and OA, with all due respect to those guys who I respect. School dropouts, some have never been to school. They don't wear suit to office. They have more buses, they run more, they They do everything better.
There are fewer staff.
You know,
actually, STC is trying to compete. It's trying to, because they are being beaten in the competition. You see what they do? They take some of their buses to those stations.
SOEs
so I'm making a point. Let me finish.
Very important in the
I disagree with you. So let me make my point. See, to the extent that you have an SOE, which is a net drain on the economy, if that SOE did not exist, we would not lose that money. And look, people say, oh, employment, they should get it. Those people who are employed there are part of the problem. This is why we end up with DDEP, debts we can't pay, and then the government loads it on you. We end up with high, exchange rates because the CD is falling. Because we are just, look, by my calculation, we lost $15 billion in SOEs. So look, what's the point? As simple as this. You have SOEs, when we appoint management and board members, they don't see it as a task. They see it as a reward. They are making losses. Every board member gets a vehicle. Management gets 2-3 vehicles. Why can't you simply say, every SOE has 2 years. 2 years. You can do it within the term of this government. And in 2 years, if you are not making profit, you are on your own. In other words, you can die slowly. All right? Because, Samson, I'm not a wicked guy. I'm simply saying, it does not make sense to go and collect taxes from hard-working guys on the sun and use it to go and pay suit-wearing people to go and sit in offices, make losses, and use that money to buy V8 and run around.
Who have staff,
declare them as losses.
Suit-wearing officers who have staff who are just watching television throughout the day, and you go there, they don't even pay attention to you. Yes, but some of the state-owned enterprises, they've done good job.
Exactly.
You see some of them, yes.
So I'm saying those who are making losses, that's why I'm starting.
Yeah, right.
Dr.
Kabiru. Yes,
so
Dr. Kabiru.
On this, I'll just say that, I reiterate my point that consultation is good, but when it doesn't yield anything, just another expenditure on the public coffers. And that this consultation, we hope it will yield something. Again, it's not the first time that is happening. And if I forgot to mention that even the Minister of Finance instituted what they call quarterly economic roundtable with the academia, where every quarter they engage with the. So it is ongoing, and it has to be. The most important thing is the outcome. Does it commensurate? At the end of the tenure, Mr. Mahmoud would say that I promised 120 days that I was going to hold economic dialogue, and I delivered. Why end? So that is ticking
the boxes.
Yeah, just ticking the boxes, and that is something we should run away from. And then talking about SOEs, my point is that when a government or the state is diversifying in the portfolio of investment that it engages in, it is only fair and balanced for you to give the net outturn, the net profitability or net loss of your state-owned institution. But if you go and pick ECG, pick VRA, pick Cocoa Board, and make a case, when in actual case, the state may be making profit as a result of if you put all the 100 state-owned enterprises together. So sometimes, to give the good picture, let the Ghanaian people know that, okay, A, B, C, D are doing well, A, B, C, D are not doing well, and then the Ghanaian people can go along with you in the narrative. Without that, it will engage in this cyclical politicking, where people will think that, look, let me bastardize the previous government. And there's one thing, and in the coming days, from Tuesday, it may come up, because how we begin to treat certain, for instance, Cocoa Board, he mentioned that they made artificial profit.
Yeah.
And that is feeding into a narrative the finance minister wants to create. Now, they would probably come to our deficit and say that our deficit is not as reported, because they will go and take contingent liabilities and put it as part of the fiscals. And that convenient accounting doesn't help in the national discourse. I just hope that because it's giving us an indication that this is what is coming. And I just hope that he will hold the brake, and don't go to creating sense of artificial fiscal deficit, when actually arrears, there's a simple definition of arrears, and as an accountant he will understand what arrears mean and what is being fed into the fiscal deficit calculation.
Let me share some of the messages that our viewers and listeners have been sending to us, and then we take a break and return to the issue of a few good men in their corruption fight, and the Office of Special Prosecutor. The Special Prosecutor himself and his staff are risking their lives. They are being chased. They are targets for people who want to actually kill them, according to the Special Prosecutor. Well, This is coming from a corporate leader in this country with many years of stellar performance running one of the most profitable businesses. It says SNIT has 18 billion cedis under management with more than 1,000 workers. Two pension fund managers have 14 billion cedis each under management with approximately 41 workers each. Food for thought. Good morning. Right, thank you very much for sending in that one. And this one from Excelleni Reigns says, a good leader will always go in for broader dialogue with other people joining hands. Everyone is involved and together we can build a strong economy. Eddie Quaino says Kofi Bentil doesn't place a value on groupthink. I find his objection to Economic Dialogue Forum so alarming and intellectually flawed. This is a wrong argument to make. What's wrong with bringing different perspectives to our economic challenges? Nene Aiku says Kofi Bentil and folks who do not see the need for the national economic dialogue are in the micro minority. The damage done to this economy the past 8 years is enormous, and we needed that consensus on where we want to go and what we should do from here. As for what damage has been done, Kofi acknowledges that and says it in terms that you may not be able to say, right? Mauli Atachi says this would surely germinate some good and solid economic policies and plans for the coming year. If the last 1 year by this same government is anything to go by, at this point, it can't be a party plan as usual. The many ideas on the table are the way to go for quicker recovery. Daniel Asari says, like Kofi Bentil said, we know all the problems and even the solutions. The problem has always been the indecisiveness of tackling the problems devoid of partisanship. The optics are just too much. Man Farid says the problems are known before the elections. Solutions are written in lengthy manifestos amid fanfares, yet politicians will have dialogue in plush hotels for days to discuss the same problems they had solutions before the elections. Sir Ben says politics is supposed to bring development and personal growth to the citizens. However, due to the parochial interest of political activities, it is rather retrogressing Africa due to the requisite laws to enforce, you mean due to lack of requisite laws to enforce the continuation of the project started by the respective previous governments. Gasma says, let Dr. Tia and Mr. Kofi Bentil know the Pharisees believed in what they thought was right until they met Jesus. The national dialogue was good in terms of social mobilization. Could new things have emerged? Yes. If it didn't, there's something wrong with validating what was already known. Yes. So many of your messages. I just want to try and read just about two more, then we go. This one says, Ken says, does good governance require meeting of diverse minds for efficiency? Meeting of Ghanaian minds so that together we all own the challenges and be prepared to make the needed sacrifices for a better future. Nothing wrong with the NDC inviting all minds for a dialogue that has a potential to benefit all. Inclusiveness is good, he says. Then Kweku says to tell Kofi Bentil that maybe you want to wait for the budget to know whether or not this yielded what you expect, because the budget will be read out and the issues will take center stage in the budget. Yakubu Ibn Chambers, once again, your message is long, but let me see. Indeed, The truth doesn't care about the feelings of those perpetuating the destruction of Ghana. For the rest to happen in Ghana, some emboldened individuals must defy the odds to unlock the dark codes towards emancipation from corruption, illegal mining, stealing, and killings. We must stop believing the fairy tales of development and wake up from our delusions. Nothing works in this country called Ghana except for the mass rush for the new resources at our disposal. Take, for example, the debate on Ghana's primary balance and the drama put out there by the politicians. Who is telling the truth? So a country of 30 million, including academics, cannot take a visceral assessment of the true state of the economy. The journey is long for Ghana. Yakubu Ibn Chambers, thanks for your message. And I've got many of you who have also sent similar messages as well. But thank you very much. We'll take a break here and we'll return. We'll look at the land looting issue and the president's order for a reversal of the looting of the foreign affairs lands, and also the special prosecutor. This time, probably still talking about the Ankonam situation, but asking us to confirm if we really want to go on and fight corruption. You need this wisdom all the time on your show. This truth and wisdom spoken raw. Men like Arthur Kennedy should always be on your show. Thank you from Ernest. We'll be right back.